Hey guys, welcome back. And yeah, I'm back as well. It's been a rough few weeks of kind of just getting everything moved and settled, but for the most part, I think I'm pretty much done. So naturally, I think I'm going to celebrate by taking a look at a few games that were just notorious for being rented by us kids back in the day, and then making us instantly regret that decision. Now, I've mentioned on here before how it was actually pretty tough for us kids to even figure out what was worth a rental and what was going to completely ruin our weekend. There were tons of games coming out all the time back then, and just keeping track of all of them wasn't possible. So it wasn't uncommon for a game to occasionally hit the shelf that actually looked like a pretty good time. Good enough that it actually ended up coming home with us, only for us to quickly discover that we ended up with a complete turd of a game. And that's what these three games were very well known for. So let's just get this thing rolling with an all-timer of a bad game rental. One that I think maybe in hindsight, we should have known what we were getting ourselves into. Now, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Shaq Fu for the Super Nintendo probably ruined quite a few kids' weekends back when it came out in 1994. And unless this is your first week on the internet, then I don't think I need to explain to you why Shaq Fu has become such a meme legend in the video game community years after the fact. I mean, it's Shaq in a fighting game, and that alone is enough to cement this game's legacy. But even back when this game came out, most of us kids were just kind of scratching our heads as to why this even existed.
Sega Genesis and Super NES.
Yes, Shaq was popular, but I never put him in the same league of mainstream popularity as someone like Michael Jordan.
Ready?
I could understand that dude getting Saturday morning cartoons and weird video game spin-offs that almost had nothing to do with basketball. But Shaq? I mean, the only thing that I ever remember him doing besides playing basketball was completely ruining what should have been a totally fun comic book movie with Steel.
It's hammer time.
And then going on to slum it up for kids in Kazam. I mean, you guys remember Kazam, right? Where Shaq played a genie who gave some annoying kid 3 wishes? Who wanted that movie?
A genie.
But the crazy thing is that those movies came out years after Shaq Fu came out.
What a magnetic personality.
So when Shaq Fu was released to just about every single system known to man at the time, kids were just kind of like, what is this? And as soon as you look at the back of the box, we got even more confused when it wasn't a basketball game. Instead, of course, this is a fighting game.
Which was the style at the time.
And even crazier, it actually looks pretty good from some of these screenshots. But as we all know, things would quickly go off the rails as soon as kids started playing this thing. Get into the game and it's about as dumb as you expect it to be. Shaq is in town for a charity basketball game and of course stumbles into an old mysterious shop where the owner starts calling him the Chosen One and tells him that he needs to go into another dimension to save some kid. Of course, Shaq being Shaq agrees to do this and finds himself on a map screen where you can then wander Tiny Shaq around to find your next fight to progress the game. But first off, before we get into the gameplay, I just want to mention the one thing that I think this game really deserves some praise for, and that's just the animation. Every character movement in this game is animated extremely well, and I'm not talking just like good, I'm talking like really good. And this was years before Capcom would even attempt this style of animation in Street Fighter 3. Of course, they did it a lot better there, but I mean, this is still really great. And it didn't hurt that the developer, Delphine Software, was already known for incredible rotoscoped animation with their work on Flashback. And they definitely carried over that expertise to Shaq Fu with some ridiculously good animations. Like I said, I mean, this is still genuinely impressive for how fluid this game is. Even Tiny Shaq on the map screen is animated really well. But the problem is that Delphine Software wasn't really known for making fighting games, like at all. Sure, Flashback was amazing, but that wasn't exactly the most precise game ever with its delayed inputs requiring you to do stuff well before the action actually happens. And I don't think I need to tell you that that style of gameplay does not translate well to a fighting game where you need super precise timing and movement to just get the basics right, let alone make it fun. Your character feels extremely sluggish as you have to wait patiently for just about everything to play out before you can get another input in, making every fight feel like it's playing out in slow motion most of the time, even though it's not. It's just that delayed with everything that you do. It looks good, but there's no immediate reactions to anything. You literally have to play it like flashback and just start planning your moves way out in advance. You can sort of get used to it, but even then, this is still just a really bad fighting game. It essentially just boils down to you hoping that you can get a punch or a kick in when you can, and just hope that you can cheese the AI enough to win a couple of rounds. You do get special attacks, but thanks to the instructions not telling you how to do any of them, you just kind of have to figure out how to do them on your own. And even after you do, getting these moves to work is just an absolute chore thanks to those delayed inputs. At least with kicks and punches, you can kinda make it work, but the instant you have to start doing multi-input combinations, then good luck. And even when you do manage to pull one off, their animation is so slow that you'll probably get hit before they even happen. It also doesn't help that every single time you pull off one of these, it sounds like someone's screaming in pain, which I guess at least mirrors how the person trying to play it feels. The game does at least throw in a few things to kind of try to make it seem like it has some depth, like a force field that you can activate while ducking, and a dash button that makes moving around even more unwieldy. There's also a fury bar that makes your character stronger when it's full, but the game plays so poorly that none of this really gets much use. Even if you try to play this thing like a real fighting game, which trust me, I tried, it always just evolves into a button-mashing mess. Just about every match that I played ended with the time running out because neither of us could hit each other enough because we were just flailing at each other and hoping that something would connect. It's just not a good fighting game. But is it the worst fighting game ever? Well, I don't think so. There's still a lot of bad fighting games out there that are far worse than old Shaq Fu here. But I think this game's legendary bad status comes from it simply ruining a lot of kids' weekends when they brought this thing home from the video store. And it's good enough looking to make you want to try to get further in it, but the gameplay's just so bad that it makes it impossible to get very good at the game at all. So every time you do play it, it just ends up being frustrating. Frustrating because it's obviously a bad fighting game with Shaq in it for whatever damn reason, and even more frustrating that you just wasted $5 on it. So if you rented this one back in the day, you have my condolences. Thank goodness Shaq stuck with ruining movies instead of video games after this mess of a fighting game came out.
It's Wayne's World, party time, excellent!
Of course, we can't talk about horrible decisions at the video store without Wayne's World for the Super Nintendo. And I'm pretty sure you all know how this is gonna end, but let's talk about it anyway because I'm pretty positive that a lot of you rented this one back in the day and instantly regretted it. But the game did come from probably one of the best movies that's ever come out of Saturday Night Live, except for Stuart Saves His Family, which is a really good movie and I will hear nothing to the contrary. But unlike Stuart Smalley, Wayne's World became a cultural phenomenon back when it came out. It was the perfect counterculture movie for the time, effortlessly turning the emerging underground rock scene of the early 90s into a full-blown pop culture event.
Okay.
And it didn't hurt that it was hilarious. It single-handedly brought Queen back thanks to one damn scene in the whole movie. Of course, I was a big fan of it as a kid, but I think maybe I was just a little bit too young for a lot of the more adult humor to land, because, well, it was aimed more at adults.
Wayne's World.
And that seemed to be the problem that the developers had making this game as well. Like, how do you make a Wayne's World game for dumb kids on the Super Nintendo? Well, I don't think they ever figured it out, because what we ended up with is the exact opposite of what made the movie so much fun. And if you're wondering on what they settled on as the main premise for a Wayne's World game, well, the manual's here to make things even more confusing. And we're gonna get more into this manual here in a minute, but as far as the setup goes, well, it's Garth has been kidnapped and sucked into a video game by a purple gelatinous cube named Xantar. Not the evil corporate Noah's Arcade guy from the movie, not Rob Lowe, but Xantar, a pixelated purple putridosity of the first degree, which is how the manual describes it. And already you can tell that the writers were just grabbing at straws here. You of course play as Wayne as you make your way through a bunch of levels in your attempt to find and free Garth. And to the game's credit, Wayne controls about as well as you'd expect from a guy who spends most of his life sitting on a couch in his basement. So, I mean, honestly, about as well as I'd control in a video game, which is not very well. The B button makes you jump, the Y button fires your guitar like some sort of sonic weapon, and the A button unleashes a swing attack. And I know you're expecting me to make fun of that, but you're not getting any complaints from me because I genuinely think that's probably the funniest thing in this whole damn game. Besides your swing attack that blows up all the enemies on the screen, you do get a few different power-ups to give Wayne different chords, like faster shots, spread shots, or just a really big shot. I mean, it's nice that they're here, but none of them really change how bad it feels to actually shoot anything with them, but more on that here in a second. And really, I do think the game gives you enough stuff to play around with for what should be a fun action platformer, but the big problem is that none of it's really any fun. Wayne honestly doesn't feel too bad in the grand scheme of things, and his guitar attacks do get the job done for the most part, but the levels in this game are just pure garbage. They're these giant mazes that just do not seem to end, with the same repeating graphics and obstacles every few seconds, making it almost impossible to figure out where you've been or where you need to go. You'll end up circling back over and over to the same spots, just trying to figure out which random platform's gonna take you to the next section. Now I know I harp on these types of levels every once in a while in these games, but Wayne's World may just be the worst example of this kind of stage design I've ever seen. There's just no rhyme or reason to any of this. It's just a bunch of platforms tossed in randomly. And the enemies in the level just kind of make it all worse, since they're all just waiting far enough off the screen to hit you with a cheap shot every single time, just making you constantly jam on the attack button so that you hit him before you even see him. And if anything's coming at you in the air, then you just better run, because Wayne does this wind-up animation whenever you want to jump and attack something, making it so horribly delayed that it's just almost completely useless to even use. Also, just look at these embarrassing excuses for enemies. It all just kind of looks like generic cartoon stuff with almost nothing to do with Wayne's World besides some of them being instruments. I know that the game is supposed to be about these random things being from a video game dimension, but I mean, come on. They all look like they were just copy and pasted from early 90s clip art software. So with all that being said, you kind of just end up with this hodgepodge of a bad game. What you kind of end up doing in Wayne's World is just trying to find your way through these awful mazes, dodging constant cheap hits from these stupid enemies and obstacles, and just hoping that you're going the right way. The jumping feels bad, the action's almost non-existent, and the only stuff that actually feels like it's from Wayne's World is in the manual for the game. And that's maybe the saddest part of the whole thing, because the manual's actually pretty hysterical. It's full of dumb jokes, warnings, and all this meta commentary that honestly captures the Wayne's World vibe more than the actual game does. But when you play it, it's just another crappy platformer where you fight cartoon trombones. Wait, I take that back. That's not actually the saddest part of the whole game. The real worst part of the game is you don't even get a good rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody here. You just get this. Wayne's World for the Super Nintendo is one of those games that really doesn't seem like it would work no matter what you did with it. The movie has almost nothing that you could really make a video game about unless it was like an adventure game or something. And while what they did here was at least an effort, it's a hell of a reach to say any of this is about Wayne's World. It feels like they were just desperately trying to shove a game into something that didn't need a game. And when the manual is the best thing about the whole thing, you know you done goofed. So if you're a hardcore collector, then yeah, sure, throw this on your shelf next to other weirdos like Home Improvement and Cool World. But if you're looking for a game that's actually worth playing, this one isn't worthy. Just go watch the movie instead. Hey, check it out. We've actually got 2 fighting games in the same video. That's actually pretty rare. But maybe calling Ballz a fighting game is a bit generous. Yes, at its core, it's trying desperately to be a fighting game, But its weird 3D gimmick, awful characters, and humor tailor-made for a 5-year-old makes it feel more like someone's experimental side project more than a game you'd want to play with someone else. And when you start a game off with music like this, then you know you're in for something special. Ballz rolled its way onto your Super Nintendo back in 1994, promising 3D fighting at its ballsiest. And if you think that this is the last reference to male reproductive organs, then you've obviously never played Ballz, because that's literally all this game ever wants to talk about. But I think that the game knew that it needed something to sell to kids, because looking at the back of the box and well, it looks awful. All the characters are just made up of circles and they don't look appealing at all. But the back of the box is desperately pleading its case with a full 3D fighting game, apparently, 3 times the special moves of other games, along with weird sound effects and a wisecracking scoreboard. Whatever that means. But to its credit, it got my attention at least, because I actually rented this damn thing out of sheer curiosity and the promise of a 3D fighting game. But what I got instead was, well, you'll see. Jump into the game and you're met with Ballz' eclectic selection of characters. You get stuff like clowns, dinosaurs, cavemen, and even a flamingo. And I can kinda see why the characters look like they came from a first grader's coloring book, since all these characters had to sort of stand out with unique designs due to them all being made up of shaded spheres. You need to be able to tell what they are based on basic shapes. Almost like how whenever you sketch a human or an animal, you usually start building it out with different sizes of circles and other shapes. But in Ballz, that's all you get. And that actually leads into this game's big 3D gimmick and why they went this route. The developers were able to create this sort of 3D effect using these spheres to make up their characters, along with a rotating playing field. And it does actually play in 3 dimensions, since pressing up or down will actually cause your character to walk into and out of the background. Something that was actually almost unheard of back then, especially on home console. But just because a proof of concept works doesn't exactly make it a fun game. And that's where Ballz literally falls apart. Because I guarantee you that the first time that you play around to this game, you'll probably be completely confused as to what's even happening. Characters stretch and deform their balls in ways that's supposed to represent kicks, punches, and throws. But it's genuinely hard to tell what's even happening half the time, let alone trying to land those attacks. It's also super sluggish, both in gameplay and its animation. And just like in Shaq, these characters are actually animated really well for what it's worth. It's just hard to try and figure out what they're even supposed to be doing, thanks to everything looking like an unfinished sketch. But again, just like Shaq, you can eventually kinda get used to it, but at that point you've gotta actually learn how to play it effectively, which is an even bigger challenge. Each character gets a punch and a kick button, and depending on which direction you're pressing, you may or may not get something different. You also get a throw that your character may or may not do if you get close, along with a grapple that your character may or may not do, where you have to jam on the punch button to overpower your opponent. And if you're seeing a pattern here, well, you're very observant, because everything about this game is just very hit or miss as to if what you're trying to do even happens. Sometimes it works and other times it doesn't. And that probably has a lot to do with the game constantly rotating around these characters, but you just can't really tell if you're in position or not due to all these balls just being jumbled together. All of the characters do at least get an assortment of special moves, but just like everything else, it's kind of impossible to be consistent with any of it. So Ballz just pretty much completely fails at being a playable fighting game. But what about the overall experience of it? And to be fair, the game itself seems to be more in love with its ability to say balls over and over than it does having decent gameplay. And in that respect, I guess Ballz is at least memorable. That much touted scoreboard is constantly in the background of every stage, giving out random blurbs that I guess are trying to be humorous smack talk. But the first time it told me to open wide for Chunky, I was more confused than anything else. Ballz honestly feels more like a tech demo than anything else. It's a neat idea for the time, but it just doesn't come together as anything that's more fun than a few minutes of button mashing with a friend. And I guess maybe if you got some enjoyment out of its super simple gameplay based around a 3D gimmick and maybe chuckled a few times at the game's bizarre humor, then you might have considered this a solid rental. I, on the other hand, absolutely hated this game. I was pulled in with those fancy-looking 3D-ish graphics and was instantly disappointed with how slow and sluggish the whole thing felt. Plus, I think Clay Fighter had already cornered the market on gimmicky fighting games with questionable humor a year earlier. And I really don't think I was alone in thinking that, since Ballz pretty much just faded into obscurity shortly after. When you tell me that the high point of your game franchise was a version of it for the 3DO, then I think we can safely assume that we've all heard the last of Ballz as a fighting game. But amazingly enough, that wasn't actually the end of the technology that powered Ballz, since the developer PF Magic would go on to use it to create a little line of computer virtual pet software called Pets. And I'm pretty sure if you had a computer in the late 90s and early 2000s, then you've probably seen them. Cats, dogs, hamsters, and just about every other damn animal they could shove into this thing littered Walmart PC software shelves for over a decade. And they were no joke either, because they sold over 20 million copies of these things. It's kind of crazy to think that Ballz, of all things, had to fail for Pets to succeed in ways that the developer probably never dreamed of. But for those of us that wasted a few bucks renting this weird attempt of a fighting game back in the day, I think we would have all probably just rather had a refund. And that is gonna do it for me this weekend because, well, I am tired and I'm not gonna lie there. It's been a long few weeks and even getting this video out was kind of a challenge. But like I said, I'm pretty good from here on out. And actually, I got a good few ideas from your comments on the movie video that I tossed up a couple of weeks ago. So I think we're actually set with some pretty fun collections for the next few weeks. But as for today's video, let me know in the comments what your all-time worst game rental was if you haven't already. Now, I know everyone has different tastes and all of that, so I'm sure a bunch of you ended up with stuff that I'd never even considered back then. And while you're doing that, can you give this video a like, even if it brought up some bad memories of ruined weekends? And maybe even a sub if you want to see some more videos like this in the future. Oh, and real quick, I get yelled at because I never mentioned this. If you do like these videos, then I think you'd like the podcast that we do every couple of weeks called Retrovaniacs. You can pretty much find it on anything like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and we've got over 200 episodes for you to listen to at this point. Also, we're just now starting our Halloween podcast for this year, so if you want to listen to some spooky classic gaming, then check it out, if you dare. But that's gonna do it for me this week, kiddos. Check back next week for some more games to chat about, but until then, thanks for watching.